If you're enjoying Playing to Win, please consider liking and subscribing. It means joining the community and being one of the first to know when new episodes drop. And we have got some unbelievable guests lined up. Your voice matters and it helps to shape these really important conversations. So get involved in the comments and let us know who you'd like to see next on the show. Today's episode contains discussions around violence against women and girls and other sensitive topics that some viewers may find distressing. Take care of yourself and consider your well-being before listening. Welcome back to Playing to Win. Today's episode is with one of the most inspirational people I know. She's the purpose editor at Glamour, one of the biggest media outlets in the UK, and she recently spearheaded the campaign to tackle image-based abuse that led to non-consensual deepfake porn becoming illegal in the UK. Now, 70,000 people have signed her petition for an image-based law. Lucy Morgan, welcome to Playing to Win.
Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Now, this conversation is really complex and it's really nuanced and it needs curiosity and empathy and an open mind to really try and understand all of the intricacies of all of these issues that are at play here. But before we kind of dive into the deep end of all of this, I would just really love to understand your own journey to this point. How did becoming a journalist start for you?
I had a really unconventional route to journalism. I left uni and went straight into teaching children gymnastics. And
Oh,
from there, went to work in a women's refuge. I went to be a nanny. Then I went to do like a law conversion course. I really just didn't know what I wanted to do. I think when I was at law school, I knew I wanted to do writing. That seemed like the only thing I was good at. And I just thought, you know what? I don't want to write about legal issues. I want to write about the things that really matter to me, which is women's lifestyle. And that kind of led to internships. And I mean, the way I got my first internship was a journalist I followed on Instagram put out a call saying, is anyone who's got pink hair available for a shoot with Cosmopolitan this weekend? I didn't have pink hair, but I replied and said, yep, I can do that.
I love this. Please tell me you dyed your hair
I
pink.
dyed my hair pink.
Incredible.
Yeah.
This is giving like Florence Given vibes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so here for this. Oh my God.
So I dyed my hair pink, went to London, did this shoot. It was for a shoot about scalp health. So it's just like the top of my pink head in Cosmo, but that was like a contact made. And from there, I got my internship at Cosmo, stayed on, did a few freelance shifts, built up my freelance kind of confidence, then got shifts at Glamour. And it was at Glamour where I really kind of discovered my passion for writing about women's safety and women's health, especially women's safety, given my previous work in the women's refuge. I found that was my kind of unique perspective and yeah, my passion. And I'm very lucky that I have now this role of purpose editor, which is dedicated to exploring all facets of women's safety and women's health.
Just absolutely incredible. And I feel like you have, when you look back at your journey, everything, even though it maybe didn't feel like it at the time, was actually quite intentional and
100%.
aligned. Like
100%.
even from leaving uni and going into teaching, already that's a very purpose-driven career to do anyway. And then the women's refuge, and it feels like there's that thread of purpose throughout everything that has literally now created a role that is dedicated to that. So that feels like it was always in your future.
It absolutely was. And to go back a little bit further, I was at university. I was like president of the Feminist Society. And I was like,
yes, Queen, I love
it was just always been like something that I've been passionate about and have always kind of fallen into. I applied or put myself forward to be president on a whim, think, oh yeah, I can do this, it'll be fine. Then it completely changed my life because, I ran campaigns at my university. We campaigned for free menstrual care. We won it at our university. And it was like laying the groundwork for the work that I'd be doing later on, knowing that if you organise and you get women together in a room, you can change things. And now we've done it on a national level with the government. And yeah, you're right. It has really always been a purpose-driven thread throughout my life. And it's great to do it on a national level now.
Yeah, what you've achieved is just, so many people would think, this is too big, I can't do this, someone else will figure it out. And I think the reality is that especially when we talk about women's issues and safety and health and kind of everything that falls under that umbrella, no one is going to do it unless we do it. And
100%.
especially when it comes to these issues, it always seems to fall to us, the oppressed, the victims, the survivors, to make the change. And that, before your life led to where you are now, that was already something that feels like it was quite rooted in you. And being at university and having the confidence to put yourself forward
Yeah.
to become a president of the feminist club, which in itself is a bit of a power move, because I feel like you need confidence to be like, yeah, I can do that. And have you always had that confidence?
Feminism has given me that confidence.
Yeah.
I was very shy at school, very scared, really wanted to fit in, really struggled at school like a lot of young people do. And discovering feminism really was just like a light bulb moment for me. It was, I can do this. And I've also, been through a lot in my life. I've experienced abusive relationships, and discovering feminism was that, and the women's movement more generally, was that moment where I realized, okay, this isn't my destiny to be this abused, downtrodden girl. This is my destiny to go and fight for other women and to go and enjoy my life and to speak up. And it never ever comes naturally to me, ever, but it's always in those kind of like screw it moments where I do my best work. And that was the Feminist Society. That was deciding to start this campaign at Glamour, which, no media brand has ever really done a round table in Parliament
No,
the way we
especially
did.
not a mainstream feminine
Yeah.
magazine that
Yeah.
wrongly or rightly has a stereotype of makeup, hair, fashion, and actually to take that and take these issues and drive them into the mainstream and make it. I think sometimes with feminism, it gets such a bad rap, firstly. And secondly, a lot of women are scared to have the label of, yeah, I'm a feminist, because they think that there's a stereotype that kind of the patriarchy's created that means we're this and we're that and we're, whatever. But actually, feminism is just equality.
Absolutely.
Like, is that how you've always approached it?
100%. I used to think feminism was all the stereotypes. I used to think, oh, screw it, I'm just going to become a feminist and shave all my hair off and just start hating men. And then when I actually learned about what it was and I started reading, the first book I read on feminism was Germaine Greer, The Female Eunuch, and that was life-changing. And
Yes,
I
absolutely.
might not be completely aligned with Germaine Greer now, but just hearing or reading someone explaining to you on this granular level of the ways women have been oppressed throughout history, literally since gender was invented, it just made so much sense. And you can see the way that it operates now, and it is just like waking up with different eyes. And it's liberating, but it's like Gloria Steinem says, like, the truth will set you free, but it will piss you off as well. So
I love that so much, because I feel like I'm very angry and I'm very passionate. And I think a lot of the times that feels heavy to other people. That feels like intense for a lot of people. And it is because of that. Like, the truth absolutely will set you free, but you're going to be fucking pissed off about it. And I can totally relate to that. And something else that I think so many women will be able to resonate to when they listen to this is, we all probably have our own stories around image-based abuse, abusive relationships, but I think something that a lot of women maybe don't even realise is they have actually experienced that and not necessarily ever realised that it is abuse, because we're so conditioned to believe this is normal, boys will be boys, it's just banter. And can you give us a bit of an insight into your own experience with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So much like you're saying, I never reflected on my own experience with image-based abuse, would never have called it image-based abuse. I just about accepted that I've left 2 abusive relationships, one after the other, and only realised in hindsight that they were abusive. And that was huge for me to realise. In one of the instances, there was image-based abuse present in that relationship, which I'd never flagged as a problem. I had always just thought, this is just men. Ugh. This is just whatever. I hadn't given it a second thought. The other instance of image-based abuse actually happened when I was technically a child. I was 14, so it would actually be classed as child pornography. Both of those instances, I didn't think about until I started campaigning on it with Glamour, and until I started working. So Glamour has partnered with Not Your Porn, with Jodie, who's a survivor of image-based abuse. Not Your Porn is a survivor collective of people who've experienced image-based abuse, and Violence Against Women and Girls Coalition has so much work on image-based abuse. All these campaign partners, it was through working with them that I actually realised, oh my God, this has happened to me too. And it's honestly, it's just like, oh God, what now? Like, what now? Like, I'm going to have to think about this. And suddenly I realized that I had known on some level. And I was like, oh, right. So that's why I don't trust people. That's why I'm scared to get into new relationships. And it was like all these things began to click. And I thought, well, you've just had at the back of your mind since you were 14 the idea of a video that exists in the world that you didn't consent to. You know, where is it now? You know, I'll never know. I don't want to ever know. I will never go to the police over it. I will never contact the person who shared it. That's just the reality for me now. I have to make my peace with the fact that that video exists of teenage me, child me.
Yeah.
It exists in the world, and I think I'm not the only one who's experienced that. There will be women like me in their 30s who will think, "Oh my God, when I was at school, something like that happened to me." Or when I was at school, someone sent me images that I didn't want to receive. And that's a crime. And what happened to me was child pornography. So that was actually a crime at the time as well. It might not have been, revenge porn only became a crime recently. These crimes that we just got through as part of the struggles and the normality of school.
This is it. And I
Yeah.
think there's so much toxic narrative as well around this is just boys,
Yeah.
this is just men, this
Yeah.
is just how it is. And I've sat here listening to your story and I've actually had quite a visceral reaction to it. And I can feel the emotion in my own journey and the light bulb moment of this has happened to me as well.
Yeah.
And I can think of so many other women in my life during my experience at school, university, my 20s, and even now when we look at people like Georgia Harrison, and
Yeah.
this happens every single day to so many women, and so many of us just internalize it and think, oh, well, it was my fault.
Yeah.
I did something wrong. I shouldn't have done this. And that toxic narrative of you should have been better as a woman, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. And even if you want to share an intimate image of yourself, it's not your fault if someone then goes and shares it. It's not your fault if someone then breaks the law and commits a crime against you. And like you said, at 14, let's use the language, let's call it what it is. It's child pornography. And we weren't kind of fortunate enough or didn't have the language when we were 14 years old to be able to call that out what it is. And I hope that having this language and this new world of where we are calling this behaviour out and we are amplifying it through all of the fantastic organisations you just mentioned and all your work with Glamour, that young girls feel confident and strong enough to say, hang on a second, this isn't right. You've just committed a crime against me and it is now illegal. And that structure and look that having the legal backing is so important to eradicate victim blaming.
It is. The legal structure is a vital element. However, it can't be the only one.
No.
I think what we really need is a cultural shift, which comes in many forms. But I know we mentioned adolescence earlier. That all stemmed from, I think, Katie, the victim, referring to Jamie as an incel. She was calling him out for his behaviour. How did he react? He killed her. He murdered her.
Yeah.
And that's the power dynamic. That's the reality of patriarchy that we're living in. So we can call it out all we want, but that doesn't change the fact that if a man feels slighted by you, if a boy feels slighted by you, and he's been radicalized online by influencers who are telling him it's his birthright to own and dominate and control women, that puts us at risk.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so you're so right. It's the legal changes. It's prevention. It's proper education around intimate image sharing to boys and girls. When I learned about intimate image sharing at school, it wasn't called that. It was a teacher saying, don't be so stupid as to send a picture of yourself. Don't be ridiculous. Why would you do that? You know, that's all it was. In more modern examples, I've spoken to girls who've been told, well, just don't share anything that you wouldn't want plastered on the side of a bus, because that's the expectation. Anything you send, they've got license to do whatever they want with. And I don't want to live in that world.
No.
I want to live in a world where people can share nudes as part of their expressing their sexuality consensually and not give it a second thought.
And I think exactly to build on that further, that dynamic of just don't share images of yourself and then it won't happen. All that's doing is then just reinforcing the shame around female sexuality.
Exactly.
That our bodies are something that we should be hidden, that we should be ashamed of. And that needs to change. And you're so right. That completely comes from a deep cultural shift. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I took from adolescence. And we can get into that in more detail. But when men feel attacked, they weaponize that through violence. And until we get to the real core of male rage, why it happens and how to channel it into productive ways. I watched something yesterday actually with Gina Martin, and she spoke about how boys and men explode outwards and women and girls explode inwards. But when boys do explode inwards, that then manifests itself into self-harm and suicide. So when we talk about the patriarchy, there's a whole element of what we're doing that is absolutely about protecting the lives of women and girls, but also the lives of men and boys
100%.
as well. This isn't, and I think that's back to our earlier point around feminism and how there's just this stereotype that it's man-hating. To be a feminist is to love men and want a better future for them 100%. As well.
I want to, if I ever have a child, if it's a boy, I want to be just as thrilled if it's a boy, if it's a girl, because I don't want to have any of these worries about them feeling demonized or being exposed to this content. I don't want to worry about that. If I have a daughter, I'm going to worry about her relationships with the people who have been exposed to this content. None of us should have to worry about that. And we need to recognize that feminism is a shared goal towards gender liberation for all of us. It's not pitting men against women. It never has been. The only people who have ever perpetuated that are anti-feminists who are invested in radicalizing men against women, and radicalization often takes the form of violence.
This is exactly it. And when we think about male rage on an amplified scale, that looks like world wars. That looks like bombing other countries. That looks like taking out entire countries, races and religions. Men have been taught that this is how you communicate. This is how you protect yourself. This is how you succeed in life. Every message that we're sent from the highest ranks of government, of power in this world, is violence. It's how men have been taught to solve problems, and when they see that played out on the biggest world stage possible, that trickles down. And this is now what this looks like on the front line in day-to-day life, that when men feel attacked, they respond with violence, and they feel attacked by women. This manosphere culture has made them feel like women are attacking them. But the culture shift that's needed is that no one's attacking you other than these bad actors on the internet. And whilst Andrew Tate is he's kind of one end of a very large spectrum, but to your point around being served that content online, I read something the other day that a young boy is served misogynistic content within 23 minutes of being on an app.
And like you say, it's not even just misogynistic content, it's violence. So young boys, men, are far more likely to see a beheading on their social media feeds. I've never seen one of those.
No.
But boys and men are, and I've anecdotally found this out, and also in plenty of reports. It's like the kind of content is not just misogynistic, it's violent. So it's that desensitization as well. So if you're scrolling past some horrifically violent content like that, inadvertently becoming desensitized to it, so that when you witness it in the world, if you're on a tube and a man is screaming in a woman's face, a video recently went viral of that happening.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, no one intervenes. In fact, one man smiles to the camera and goes, "Oh my God," and laughs. And that's the world we're creating. If we're desensitized to violence just on a general scale, when we witness it being weaponized against women, we do nothing.
This is exactly it, because we've just become so, it's just so normal
Yeah,
to feel like that.
completely.
And and I think that another real huge takeaway from adolescence for me, that it probably wasn't even that significant for a lot of
Mm.
people, but something that I found really quite profound was the scene where, after the van had been graffitied, Lisa, the sister, was upstairs sitting on the bed with her mum,
Mm.
and the mum was trying to lighten it a little bit for her, and sort of said, like, started talking about her boyfriend and said, "Oh, is Billy looking after you?" And she kind of turned around and said, he doesn't look after me, I can look after myself."
Mm.
And there was a few things that came out of that for me, and one of them was that even now, young girls are led to believe that safety, security, happiness, well-being all depend on how a man treats you. It's not
Mm.
something that you can ever have for yourself. And then I thought the other thing was that it really highlights this false sense of security, that as long as you're with the right man, you're
Mm.
safe and you're looked after. And what we and the reality of that is so far from the truth. I think in the UK, every 10 minutes, a woman or girl is killed by their intimate partner or family member. So how is it that as long as you're with the
Mm.
right man, you're
Yeah,
safe,
you're
you're
far
looked
more likely
after?
if you're a woman, you're far more likely to die at the hands of a current or ex-partner than you are by anyone else.
Today's episode of Play to Win is brought to you by the real MVP of life's messiest moments, Here We Flow. Because babe, if you're still using toxic, plasticky period products, what are you even doing? Here We Flow was started by two besties in a bathroom. One was totally over the patriarchy. The other just wanted an organic tampon that she didn't have to import from Mars. And now they've revolutionised the game with fiercely natural period care. We're talking 100% organic plant-based tampons and bamboo pads, period pants that feel like a hug for your vagina, and packaging that actually won't outlive us all.
Your vagina, not your face.
Oh, and if you've ever done that sneeze, you know the one. They've got a brand new sensitive bladder range to keep things cute. Plus, their EXO by Flow condoms just landed in Tesco, sustainable and ultra sensational, so your love life can be just as clean and green as your period. Here We Flow is tackling the stigma and breaking the taboos around female health. No more shame or awkward whispers, just confidence, empowerment, and the freedom to take up space. Plus, they're a certified B Corp, meaning they put people and planet before profit. A brand with a backbone, we love to see it. So grab Here We Flow at Tesco, Sainsbury's, Whole Foods, or online at hereweflow.co, because owning your flow is the real flex. Guys, don't judge me, I'm in my luteal phase. So even this, and that was such a really profound kind of message that I took from that scene, was that, oh wow, like even now, these parents who are well-intentioned, well-intentioned and
Completely.
want the best for their kids, are unintentionally reinforcing these narratives of, like, to young girls, of, as long as you've, firstly, there's so much complexities in that around same sex and all of that, but
Yeah.
equally that real thing of, like, as long as you just find a good man, he'll look
Mm.
after you, and it's just not true. You're still just at risk of and that's not to say that all men are violent, it's to say that there's a violence issue in the male community, and we want to help them just as much as we want to help ourselves and help
Absolutely.
the future of the girls that will hopefully never have to experience what you, me, and so many other women really have had to deal with. But there's been a lot of people saying about adolescence that they didn't get it, they never found out why he did it. And for me, it's so blatant, it's all there,
Yeah.
laid out. But why do you think that is, and why do you think people are struggling with that?
I mean, first of all, it's a TV series. It's doing something very clever in that it's trying to show a real issue, and it's made lots of tweaks, doing it in one take, etc., to try and really get that across, that this is founded in reality and there are no happy endings in reality. There are no overall meanings, there are no twists. These things do just happen. They have happened. We've seen them happen in the past few years. So that's clearly why the creators of the show have done that. And also just to show the horror of it, that male violence happens and it's just horrific. There's no rhyme or reason to it. You know, we live in a society where I'm just getting to the point where no news story can shock me.
Yeah.
When, you know, the Giselle Pellico case happened, I thought, what's it going to take for it to be too far? And, you know, the people who are affected by that, Giselle, has to keep living. There's no final.
She doesn't get to start all over
She doesn't
again.
get to start all over again. She doesn't get to turn the TV off. Katie's family in Adolescence, they don't get to turn it off and find some resolution of this is why he did it. Okay, we can come to some kind of resolution, some happy ending, some shared knowledge. That doesn't happen.
I love that angle actually on it because it's so true. And I think so many people came to it as like, oh, we're just going to watch a great TV show on Netflix tonight and it's a drama and it's brilliant and things are dramatized. But from your experience and doing so much work in this space, how realistic is that of what's happening right now?
I think in terms of violence, male violence against women, I think it is realistic because it feels senseless.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about specific examples because I don't want to draw too much attention to the families who are already going through absolute agony.
Yeah.
But for those that have been to trials and sat in, you know, courtrooms waiting for verdicts to be read out, that's the beginning of the rest of their lives. That's the end of a TV show, but the beginning of the rest of their lives for actual real people.
Yeah.
And your life is never the same once you've experienced male violence, whether it's murder and you're a victim's family or friend, whether it's sexual violence and you're carrying on living after experiencing it. Your life is never the same again, and you just have to accept that and you just have to get on with it. There's no resolution. Even if you go to therapy, even if you make peace with it, you know, the wound is still there. And I can't remember who said it, but like recovery is essentially you growing around the issue. The issue never goes away, but you grow around it. You learn to live with it.
Yeah.
And my thoughts are always with the victims and the victims' families. And I really appreciated that Adolescence showed the horror from the perpetrator's side, because that's really driving home how embedded it is.
Just a normal family.
Just a normal family.
And I think they did such a good job of showing that. And maybe that's why people were like, but where's the childhood trauma?
Exactly.
And even Ashley Walters' character said, I think right at the beginning when they first took Jamie into the police station, what's his dad like with him? Has his dad done something? Like, there's always this thing of there must be a reason why that boy behaved in that way. And it's more than just everyday life. And from my perspective, I just thought it did such a good job of showing that this could happen to anyone, a very normal family. There was no big incident that happened that sent him down a wrong path. It was just everyday reality. And the fact that as adults, that was the other message for me, was that adults have no idea what is going on in this space, how to deal with it, how to talk to their children, and they resonate with this issue as one thing only, and that's Andrew Tate. This is not even about him. This is so much bigger than that. That's one end of a spectrum. Like you said, there is so much more, and that's just how adults relate to it. It's like, oh, yeah, I've heard about that, not good, keep kids away from it. It's not just that.
Yeah, and I also think within this conversation there's only so much that parents can do. We saw that Jamie was from a loving family. There was no reason for it except what was on his phone. So is there a solution we take away his phone? Maybe it's one solution, but there's also a responsibility from the tech companies who are hosting this content, who are delivering this content directly to his phone, who are picking up on the content that he is lingering on, going, he likes this influencer, let's feed him a bit more. That's radicalizing, and they should be held accountable for that. And at the moment, they're not. They're allowed to moderate and regulate the content on their own terms. Even under the Online Safety Act, they can regulate it on their own terms. We haven't seen how the Online Safety Act is going to play out, how Ofcom is going to enforce it. I'm looking forward to seeing how it will. But at the moment, social media companies, porn companies are just able to feed misogynistic, highly violent content towards teenagers, teenage boys, teenage girls, and not really face any consequences. And they play a crucial role in this radicalization. So that's one aspect. Then there's the broader aspect, which always feels insurmountable, which is the cultural shift where this content just isn't made anymore. That feels so much harder to shift the dial on. It feels like the more you try and speak out about it, like you speak about Giselle, you go, look, this is misogyny in action. There was a whole site of people who were looking at this content of her who never raised the alarm. This is a societal problem. And people go, yeah, but it's not all men. And I just think, oh my God, we were talking about not all men when I was at uni 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And we haven't managed to get to the point where enough men feel comforted that it's not them. They know it's not them. And let's join in the mission of shifting the dial on the patriarchy towards equality. It's still very defensive. And I think Adolescence has shown as well in the reaction to it that people still view calling out male violence against women as demonizing men.
Yeah.
And I really resent that. I really resent that calling out male violence is seen as demonizing men, because once again, the murdered girl is almost, an ancillary issue.
Yeah.
Irrelevant.
Yeah. And that's the most I can only empathize. I can't possibly imagine what it must feel like to be the family of a murdered girl. And we've seen it play out so much in media that we as women, safety is such a heavy part of our lives. It takes up so much space in our brains that men don't necessarily realize that, because we are so used to thinking, don't walk alone at night in the dark, don't have your headphones in, all the things that we are told to do. We're taught, don't do this because a man is going to do this to you. And there's that cultural shift around, like, this is actually not it is a woman's issue, because we are the ones that are the victims of that. But this is a man's issue. This is an issue in the male community that they need to collectively stand up and do better for young boys. Where are all the male role models? Where are they? Like, we see so many of them, and I'm not going to call them all out, but there's so many men who are presented as good men, family men. Why are you not taking the positive action and raising your voice and using your platforms to do this? The burden should not always be with us to try and protect the future generation. And that includes boys, that includes men. We want everyone to thrive together. Like, this isn't about demonization.
I mean, I always think of this quote by Eve Ensler when we come onto this kind of thing, but she said, I'm just sick of the passivity of good men. Why aren't you enraged? Why aren't you
use your male rage for this?
Yeah, exactly. Why aren't you in bits? And I mean, this is paraphrasing, but why aren't you completely enraged by the women being battered and raped? Why is that not enough for you? Why does it have to be that it benefits men too to get rid of patriarchy? Because it does. It absolutely does.
Absolutely. Patriarchy, I would say that men are, in very different ways, just as much victims of that as, and in Adolescence, we absolutely saw that. Look at what Stephen Graham's character, like, that was patriarchy that did that to that family, that did that to Jamie, that did that to Stephen Graham's character. And I've seen a lot of press with Stephen Graham and Ashley Walters. And how important do you think it is that we see more men having these conversations publicly, who have these platforms, who, are in the public eye?
It's vital. I mean, and there are good men that I want to shout out. So Dan Guinness and Ben Hurst spoke at Glamour's Roundtable a couple of weeks ago.
They're brilliant.
They work at Beyond Equality, which goes into schools and teaches young boys about positive masculinity, about healthy relationships. Everyone's invited. They also spoke at Glamour's Roundtable. And one thing they said that really stood out to me was meeting young people where they are. So not the imagined radicalized teenager that you hear about on TV or indeed on Netflix, but meeting them where they are and going from there. And they're doing exceptional work, but it's not enough. It needs to be mainstream rather than the work of a few good organisations. And we saw Gareth Southgate did a speech a couple of days ago calling out, that the masculinity crisis for young boys. And people like him, he's done so much to be a positive role model for young boys and young girls. He's shown, he can lead a team to two finals, two massive finals, which hasn't been done in years, and also fail and not win, and still do that gracefully, and still take the positives from it, and still go out and be a positive citizen and share what you've learned with the rest of the world. And it's important that men like him are highlighted, and Glamour has just done a feature on men that have spoken positively about feminism and what masculinity means. Jordan Stevens is another great example. He talks a lot about the pressures on young boys and how that impacts like personal relationships. So yeah, we need that to become the norm. And there's only, again, that falls with tech companies. If you know from the data you've got on a social media user that they're likely to be a teenage boy, and you're choosing to serve them content that's more Andrew Tate adjacent, or is starting to lead down that rabbit hole, or it's violent, or it's pornographic, instead of what their actual interests might be. They might be more interested in cricket, and they'll have shown something on their algorithm that will indicate that, but for some reason it's not cricket that's being tailored towards them. It's violent pornography. I once dated someone who thought TikTok was a porn app, because whenever he went on TikTok, all he got was porn. I've never seen porn on TikTok.
Never in my life have I seen porn on TikTok. So what is happening here? And these tech bros, come on, do better.
Do better.
Do better. And it shouldn't take having a sister, a wife, a daughter, a mother, a niece, a girlfriend to care about this shit. And that's what we see a lot, is it only really hits them when it's close to home, and it's oh my god, my daughter, oh my god, oh my god. And it shouldn't be that. But then equally, I think when we talk about the patriarchy and how it really attacks men, that if they show any element that is outside of this really narrative, restrictive ideal of go out and get girls, banter, control, strength, dominance, it attacks them and tells them that you shouldn't be sensitive, you shouldn't show your emotions, you shouldn't, you have to hold it together all the time. And then they attack themselves.
Exactly.
And they then feel unworthy. And then we have this whole mental health, self-esteem crisis that men are battling. We know the stats around male suicides and all of that area of this, but the patriarchy is a direct attack on that.
And I think with the patriarchy, you say the word patriarchy and people switch off. They go,
oh, absolutely,
it's patriarchy, of course.
Back to that feminist stereotypical,
but it's not an abstract concept.
No.
On my way here from London, I've experienced the patriarchy all around me. It's the social forces all around me that dictate how I live and how others relate to me. If I'm sitting on a bus and a group of teenage boys walk past me and sit at the back and start making misogynistic remarks about a girl in their class, which happens quite regularly, do I turn around and call them out on it? Probably not. And that's the patriarchy. That's the power dynamic. It's a real present thing that exists between me and those teenage boys, that means that I have to make a decision for my safety, and that they get to talk about objectifying another woman in the presence, loudly, in front of the presence of other people, and no one will have the guts to call them out on it. That's the patriarchy. And there's a million examples of those little things happening all the time. It's not just a boy being radicalized online and then murdering his classmate. That's the final result. That's the end point.
Extreme.
That's the extreme end point. But the patriarchy is something that we all of us, regardless of gender identity, walk through every single day. It affects all of our lives. And I just want people to understand that it's not something that feminists just go, right, okay, we're going to sit down, have a meeting and talk about,
how can we bring men down today? It's not that.
It's not that.
Never
it's
been
about,
that.
I want to get on the bus and not think about sexism, not think about my safety. I want to walk home, like you say, with my headphones in, maybe. Listen to Arlo Parks and just and just look at
And just enjoy
my
my
surroundings
life.
and just enjoy my life. I don't want to think about my
Yeah.
safety constantly.
This is it.
I
And
don't. I don't want to hate men. I don't want to be
No.
scared of them.
no,
I don't want
exactly
any
that.
of that.
Exactly that. Like, exactly. You want to be able to, if you're heterosexual,
Yeah.
you want to be able to go onto a dating app
Yeah.
or go on a date and meet men and fall in love and have all of the wonderful stuff
Yeah.
that comes with that without thinking, I need to text 4 friends
Exactly.
what my location is. I
Exactly.
need to make sure that I need to text my mum when I get home at night because she's going to worry if not. I can't walk through the park because there's no street lights or people around. And it is so all-encompassing that we're so used to it, but it's heavy. Even
is.
like if you're a runner,
I was just going to mention
gets to
runners.
4:30 in winter.
Yeah.
Where are women supposed to go?
Yeah, my
'Cause we're
flatmate
told-
does that. She walked into the living room the other day wearing shorts and a sports bra. Went, will I get sexually harassed if I go out like that? And I went, well, yeah, probably, but you should still go out if you feel comfortable like that. You shouldn't have to live your life.
Shrink yourself
Shrink
all
yourself.
the time.
You should be able to go running comfortably. Men go running in just shorts. You
Yeah.
know, no t-shirt, and it's fine. We all just say
Oh,
that's
at
fine.
summer, you can't. Everywhere you look, they've got their tops off, and we
Yeah,
just,
exactly.
but
And they don't worry about women.
they don't need to worry about their safety.
About their safety. They don't have to think, well, you know, if I end up dead in a ditch, it'll be my fault because I was running around without my top on. It doesn't occur to them, and it shouldn't. But it shouldn't occur to us either. But unfortunately, that's it. That's the patriarchy on a granular level. That's the way it shapes our lives in those decisions. That's where it is. And I think men sometimes when you're talking about it will say, oh God, you know, people just love to hate on men. And it's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
It's not. And you might feel attacked in that moment when men are being called out. But for the rest of your time outside that moment, you're living your life mostly as a safe human being with no idea of the way that your presence is impacting the people around you and the way the power dynamics of the patriarchy are enabling you to move through society safely.
Yeah, exactly that. And it is just that real, I can't imagine how free it must feel to not have to worry about your safety everywhere. And even if it's not safety, every single woman who is listening to this will be able to relate to being catcalled, having car horns beeped at them, having their arses slapped, being looked up and down in a leering way, having to hide behind, you know, I can't wear this, I can't wear that. Someone's going to touch me inappropriately. Someone's going to say something. Someone's going to spike my drink. It is constant. Every single room we walk into, every single activity we take part in, there is that angle of safety, always. And imagine how much we could achieve and imagine how much we could thrive as a
100%.
society if, one, men didn't do this in the first place, but secondly, if we didn't have to carry that weight and we could just be free to be safe human beings, like you said. But I think in terms of where we go from here, we teach girls consent and we teach men respect, and consent has always been positioned to us as young girls and even as women. Consent's something that a man can take away from you, but actually we need to be educating boys about consent as well, and what that would feel like for them, and how that wouldn't, and all the work for those amazing organisations that just spoke so powerfully at the round table that I was lucky enough to be part of. That's what this is really all about. Instead of placing the weight on the woman it's the common thread throughout this entire conversation.
Yeah, it is. It always comes back to consent.
It always comes back to consent. But boys need to understand so they can protect themselves as well.
Absolutely.
Like, it might not all be men, but 95, 99% of the time, it is a man. And if a man doesn't feel safe walking through a park at night, it's not because they're scared they're going to be attacked by a woman.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, and look at, I think there's a new story that's just come out about how, you know, the victims of sextortion, which is when someone either does access your intimate images or says they have access to your intimate images and then blackmails you on the threat of releasing them, that impacts young boys at a much bigger rate than it does young women.
That's so interesting.
And who's doing it? Men.
And this is it as well. When we think about image-based abuse, what is under that umbrella? Because it's such a big rapper, and I think a lot of people might be like, what actually is that? So can you
Yeah.
give us kind of a bit of an
Yeah.
understanding?
So I define it when I'm writing about it at Glamour as a broad term that encompasses any harmful action involving a nude image. And that nude image can be artificially generated, or it can be a real nude image. So that can mean sharing an image without consent. It can mean deep faking an image of someone just using their face from a social media profile. It can mean taking a picture up someone's skirt. It can mean down blousing, which is when you take a picture of someone down their top. Sextortion happens when you basically receive threats that your intimate images are going to be shared unless you pay the money, and that happens to teenage boys at a much bigger rate than it happens to teenage girls. Um, so yeah, it really is quite all encompassing, and it can happen on dating apps as well. So I know I've spoken to one survivor whose images were shared on a dating app, and then she received abuse from all these men because she hadn't turned up to these dates that she'd arranged with them. So they'd found her on social media and, called her a slut, called her a slag for not coming up on these days. And this is just, she's done nothing, but her image has been taken and uploaded onto a dating site and used to enact this harm. And it's also deceiving other men who are then lashing out at her. It's just really toxic, and there's no real regulation around it from the tech companies. The government is making small efforts in terms of criminalizing deepfakes, but actually there's so much more that needs to be done to make sure that when companies are aware that this content is on their sites, including
Which
dating
they are.
apps, which they are, because they're making money off it. They won't say that part out loud, but they're monetizing it. They know they've got 4 million users on their sites per day, and they're there for this content, so they're not going to remove the content.
At what point do we put people before profit? At what, like you
Yeah.
said earlier, what does it take? Is
Yeah.
there not enough horror around us in this space? Is there not, have enough girls not died yet?
Yeah.
And it's not even like having, that's again the extreme. Is there not enough examples of this yet to really show these tech companies that this is wrong and it's causing deaths? People's
Yeah.
lives are being taken over this. At what point do they step forward? And do you think that's something that the government can
The government
pressure?
yeah. So Glamour, in partnership with EVOR, so it's the End Violence Against Women and Girls Coalition, Not Your Porn, Jodie, who is a survivor who works with us, and Professor Claire McGlynn, we're calling for an image-based abuse law which encompasses 5 key areas. So that's the criminal law, the civil law, prevention through education, funding specialist services, and crucially introducing an image-based abuse commission, so an online tech commission that looks specifically at image-based abuse and the companies that are hosting it. This is crucial, and it's the one part, I think, that the government doesn't want to commit to. It doesn't want to regulate the internet as much as it says it wants to make the internet, the safest place. It doesn't. Peter Kyle, the technology minister, has said that he wants to treat tech companies with the same reverence as you would a nation state. And do you regulate nation states? Do you tell them what they can and can't do? No, you don't. And actually, we need to. And when we talk about porn specifically, which is where people unfortunately are getting ideas about how to have sex with women and how to treat women in their lives and what women enjoy. The porn review, which was done by Baroness Gabby Burton, has made several recommendations, and the government hasn't really said anything about it. So the review has suggested or recommended that choking in porn should be banned, because actually there's no safe level of choking you can do, and people are seeing choking in porn and thinking that's normal, and actually it's resulting in brain damage. They're seeing anal sex presented as normal, and that's resulting in girls going to their doctors with damage to their insides.
I'm just like exasperated. Like
And what's being done? Are the porn companies being held accountable? We'll see. We're in a really crucial stage where Ofcom is enforcing its codes on violence against women and girls and protecting them. I know that Jess Asato, I think she's called, who's an MP, is putting in an amendment to the data bill, which is going to ask the government basically to include these recommendations from the pornography bill to ban choking porn, to stop incest porn. So that's when you get the old stepbrother and stepsister kind of thing, which is presented as just entirely normal. Yeah.
What?
But that's the content they're
Yeah, and
consuming. And
this
so the
is so
government
real.
needs to,
Yeah.
the government needs to accept her recommendations, accept the pornography reviews recommendations. But I think it will put up a fight because it's a hard thing to go and ask, the leading porn site, which gets literally 10 million users a day, to change its content. You're going to take them to court, are you? Like, with what money? It's really hard, but at the same time, like, if we want to protect women and girls and stop boys being radicalized online and create a world where men and women can have healthy relationships and
Yeah.
enjoy sex with one another, then that's what needs to be done.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think that when we talk about the future generation, we always look at the next generation coming up as hopefully more evolved,
Yeah.
more educated, and to see, I feel like as a society, we are failing young
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
We are failing young people. And again, something that I really took away from adolescence is that we fundamentally don't understand this generation that's coming up. They're the first to experience this digitally evolved world from birth,
Yeah.
and we don't know where they're at or how to meet them there. And I think that's something that we as a society need to take responsibility
Yeah.
for. And that was kind of really the overarching call to action that I took from a lot of the press and obviously from the roundtable, those fantastic organisations you mentioned, who these men who are talking about this publicly and privately and taking some responsibility to be better role models. Even if you are a good man, you can be an even better man,
Yeah.
and you can help create more better men. And I think when it comes to that, to play devil's advocate here, do you think that there is part of this conversation that makes good men or male allies feel that they don't know what to say because they're so scared of saying or doing the wrong thing?
That's certainly something that comes up. It comes up in any space where a group is organising for themselves and for their liberation. Black people's liberation makes white people uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable to be in a room. When I was at university, we'd be talking about, I go to these spaces where predominantly black people talking about how white people's
Yeah.
racism has impacted them. It makes me uncomfortable, but it's
Yeah.
not about me. And part of being a grown up and part of socializing and learning about the world is recognizing that you need to be uncomfortable sometimes. You need to recognize, you need to learn your history. You need to understand what, the whole world is built around race, gender, and class. And we're not really taught about that in school unless you do psychology at A level. You're not really taught about the world in which you move through. So when, of course, you get on Twitter or X and people are saying, well, there's a great replacement theory and, there's going to be no white people left in Britain, and that you're getting that, your brain's not fully developed yet. It's got loads of clicks, loads of people are retweeting it, or it's something like, oh, you can't say anything, men are under attack because if a woman makes a false accusation against you, that's your life over.
It's a very small
It's a very,
percentage,
very small,
complete outlying cases that then are positioned to men, especially young boys, that this is what women do.
This is what
of
will
course she
happen.
lied. This is why we
Exactly.
shouldn't believe them.
And instead of interrogating that
Yeah.
and saying, well, actually, the vast majority of rape cases do not end in a conviction. The vast, vast majority. It's almost like an anti-intellectual culture we live in, where it's like, it's just instant gratification, instant. You read something by some influencer or, by some reform MP about race, about gender, and you just retweet it. You don't think about it in a wider context. You don't think, oh, I'm going to read a book on that, or I'm going to read an essay about that. I'm going to think for myself on that.
Completely.
And there is a fear of getting it wrong.
Yeah.
There is. And there is an element, maybe that's more prominent on the left, where if you say something wrong, you'll get called out. And there are always going to be people that want to call you out.
Yeah.
But that's just part of life now.
Yeah.
And you've got to be a grown up. You've got to say, well, actually, no, this is what I believe and I'm trying my best.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a bad person, and I want to make the world a more equal place for all genders, for all people, no matter what their skin colour or their class. This is what I believe in. And you have to have the confidence to go out and search for that information yourself, rather than just being fed this algorithm it's almost taking away your freedom of expression, because it's telling you exactly what to think, and you're gobbling it up and then regurgitating it, and you're serving a purpose for the, you know, the Reform Party, or for Tommy Robinson, or for Andrew Tate. You're just, you know, giving them more money and more airtime. Whereas actually, if you thought for yourself, that would be freedom of expression. That would be freedom of speech. But I do get it. I do get that it's hard, but we all experience uncomfortable feelings when we're learning about oppression, and we have to sit with them and we have to move on ultimately.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're so right. We as a society have become so lazy with critical thinking.
Completely,
I don't think
completely.
the majority of people know how to even activate that part of
Yeah,
their brain anymore. And like you
yeah,
said, the irony of all of this is that the people who come for freedom of
yeah.
speech, we don't want to be, they are the ones that are reducing the freedom of speech and the freedom
Completely.
of expression
Yeah.
for everyone, especially young boys and
Mm,
men who then are so scared to get it wrong,
yeah.
and so scared to kind of raise their heads above the parapet and go,
Mm,
actually, maybe we shouldn't rape women.
yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't be doing all of these awful things. And it's not because I've got a daughter and it's
Mm,
not because I've got a sister. It's just basic humanity.
yeah.
It's the right thing to do. And I think, especially within male friendships,
Yeah.
privately and publicly, to encourage
Yeah.
men to have these conversations with each other, because I guarantee if you feel like it, so do other
Yeah.
people. Everyone's just too scared to say it. But actually, conversation, and as we know this. You're a journalist. I know this from
Mm,
my career and this podcast. Conversations matter.
they
People's
do.
voices matter, and when you lift it and you come together, we can create so much change. And like I said, at the moment, we're letting down an entire generation who are the future. At the round table, Jess Davis said her story started a decade ago.
Yeah.
This is not new. This is not a new frontier of violence against women. It's existing, it's been existing, and all it's doing is growing. And all it's doing is we're becoming more aware of it. What would you say to any other survivors of image-based abuse? Where do they go from here?
It's so hard. It's ultimately a decision that they have to make with themselves, because I can't say to any survivor, just go to the police,
Yeah.
because I know that'll be rough for them. There is a high chance, especially if it's a historical case, that it won't go anywhere.
Yeah.
If you want to go to the police, you absolutely should. But know that there's a community of people. I recommend getting in touch with Not Your Porn, run by my wonderful friend Elena Michael. Sorry, she's called Eleanor Michael. Um, get involved with Glamour's campaign. Know that you're not alone. There are systems out there to support you, but fundamentally, what we're calling for, one of the 5 things we're calling for, is funding to specialist services. I think it's something like 59% of rape crisis centres in the UK risk being shut down, or having their funding reduced this year. What How are we supposed to support survivors? You know, it's all well and good to say, look, there's people who support you. There are people who can support you, but unless the government's supporting those support services, there's only so much they can do. So I would say reach out to other survivors and know that it doesn't define you. That's something I've wrestled with for a long time in my work in violence against women and girls space, is thinking, well, what on earth would I be doing had I not experienced violence at a young age? You know, would I be a high-flying lawyer? Would I be working in a cafe? Would I have kids by now? Like, how would my life be different? And ultimately, you just have to make peace with the fact that it has happened and that your life is on this course now, but you can still go on and do everything you wanted to achieve in life and more.
I love that so much. Turn your pain into purpose.
Yeah.
Exactly like you are doing so tremendously,
Thank you.
Lucy, for everyone. Keir Starmer this week
Mm.
said that he wants to show adolescence in schools. How do we feel about this?
I mean, Keir Starmer can do a lot more than that. He's the Prime Minister. So there is a lot more he can do than show a Netflix documentary in schools. For a start, he can introduce an image-based abuse bill, which we've helpfully categorised into 5 categories for him: the criminal law, civil law,
This is
prevention,
just so
funding,
women.
and tech.
Yeah, exactly.
These are
We've
the
done the hard
5
work for you.
areas. All you need to do now is do exactly what you've done with the assisted dying bill, put it on the cards, Let the public have a conversation about it, debate it in Parliament, and ultimately come up with a piece of legislation that is going to protect women and girls from online abuse and image-based abuse. Also, they've got this lovely pledge to halve violence against women and girls within the decade. We've had no clarity on whether that pledge includes online violence. We know from shows like Adolescence that online violence and image-based abuse is often a precursor to physical violence, often life-ending physical violence. If he's not including online abuse within that pledge, where do we go from there? We need clarity on whether he's including that, and if he is including that, then he needs to introduce an image-based abuse bill. It's great. Show adolescence in schools. That's fine, but make sure that's not all you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so easy for this piece of art to become, oh, well, I've seen it.
Yeah,
It's
I've
not
seen it. So
enough.
yeah, you don't. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not enough. It's just, and I'm so grateful that it has been made because it
Me
started
too.
this huge
Yeah.
conversation, and it's really showing it in a mainstream way that is more digestible to the masses who maybe don't know the ins and outs in the same ways that that you and I do. But it's so much more than just a Netflix documentary.
And
And
that's it. And we shouldn't have to wait. It's like the post office scandal. We shouldn't have to wait for a beautifully put together production for the people who run our legislative body to actually do something about it. We shouldn't have to wait for the ITV drama, the Netflix drama for issues to be taken seriously. The Prime Minister, he's been wanting to be Prime Minister his whole life. He finally is. He's got people who have got the intel, they've got all the information, they've got the survivor stories, they've got the stats. We've done all the hard work for him. He now has to go and implement it. He's got the power. So it's time
what
to
more do
use
you
it.
need?
Yeah.
What more do you need? How can people get involved, Luce? How can they support the campaign? How can they support with the funding?
So, yeah, so our campaign, as I've mentioned, covers these 5 areas of
Yeah.
image-based abuse. The essential way that we're trying to get Sir Keir Starmer's attention is through our petition, which is available on Glamour UK's homepage. Sign that petition, get involved. We've got a Glamour group chat on Instagram where we post a little behind-the-scenes footage. Get involved on there, follow us on socials, and we're going to be doing lots more events in the future, more roundtables, more events where we're getting people involved and, share your story, be loud and proud, and sign our petition.
I love that so much. And I think it's just a perfect way to round off this episode where we started in that collective action
Yeah.
works. And when women come together, we are so powerful.
We are.
And we can make this world a better place and encourage the male allies around you and the men in your life to want to support and
Yeah.
protect and keep us safe and keep themselves safe. Thank you so much. This has been an incredibly powerful conversation, and I hope that everyone listening takes something really profound away from it.